A woman walks into work on an ordinary morning, coffee in one hand, phone buzzing in the other, already mentally rehearsing the list of things she is expected to get through before 5 o'clock. Nothing about the morning suggests it will be different from any other. Same building, same badge scan, same tired hallway smell of burnt coffee and printer toner. Then it happens. Someone stops by her desk before she has even sat down. A last-minute ask, dressed up as a small favor, the kind she has said yes to 100 times before without a second thought. Cover this, handle that, take this off my plate, you're so good at this. The words barely change from one time to the next. Except this time, something in her stalls. She opens her mouth to give the automatic answer, the one that has kept her liked, dependable, easy to work with for years, and instead, quietly, almost surprising herself, she says the word no. No dramatic music. No one applauds. The person asking blinks, recovers, says, "Oh, okay, no worries," and walks off like nothing happened. But she sits back down at her desk and feels something unfamiliar settle over her. Not guilt. Not the usual scramble to soften it, explain it, apologize for it. Just quiet. She has said no plenty of times in her head. This is the first time it made it out of her mouth and survived contact with another human being. Nobody in that hallway realized what they had just witnessed. Because the moment did not look financial. It looked like an ordinary, forgettable exchange between two coworkers. But that one syllable was the most expensive word she never used to say, and the most valuable one she just started saying for free. Most people assume financial freedom is built in banks. It is not. It is built in conversations exactly like that one. Small, uncomfortable, forgettable conversations where a woman is asked for something and, for the first time, does not automatically say yes. Here is the part nobody wants to admit. Saying yes feels free. It feels generous. It feels like the version of a woman everyone loves. But somewhere between the 10th favor and the 50th obligation, yes stops being kindness and quietly turns into a subscription service she never signed up for, charging her in time, energy, and money on autopay forever. And she never gets an invoice. That is the whole problem. So let's talk about the real cost of a woman's yes, why it is far more expensive than anyone tells her, and why the women who eventually build wealth are not the ones who worked harder. They're the ones who got tired first. Most financial advice starts with income. Earn more, save more, invest early. Reasonable advice, mostly useless because it assumes the problem is math. It is not math. A woman can earn 6 figures and still feel financially exhausted, not because she does not make enough, but because she has quietly agreed to spend her resources on everyone except herself and called it being a good person. Here is the belief almost every woman grows up carrying without ever examining it. Being agreeable is safe. Being available is valuable. Being the one who always shows up, always helps, always says yes, is what makes a woman likable, dependable, worthy of being kept around. Nobody sits her down and says this directly. It is absorbed from how gratitude is handed out generously to the woman who accommodates, and how disappointment is handed out just as generously to the woman who sets a boundary. So she learns early. Yes gets rewarded. No gets punished, or at minimum, gets a long, uncomfortable silence. The problem is that yes has a price tag, and it is rarely written in dollars. It shows up in the freelance rate she quietly lowers because the client sounded stressed. It shows up in the extra project she agrees to at work with 0 extra pay because turning it down might make her look difficult. It shows up in the money she lends without expecting it back, the gift she buys because everyone else is buying one, the time she gives away in hours that could have gone toward the business, the certification, the rest she actually needed. None of these moments feel financial. That is exactly why they are so dangerous. A woman will track her coffee spending down to the last $5, then hand over $300 worth of unpaid labor, favors, and discounted rates in a single month without blinking, because it did not arrive wearing a price tag. It arrived wearing a smile and the words, "You're so amazing for doing this." Here is where it gets interesting because this is not really a story about money. It is a story about a woman slowly discovering that her yes has been doing the job her financial plan was supposed to do, and doing it badly. If you're the kind of person who likes unpacking the psychology behind money, status, and the quiet decisions that shape a woman's financial life, stick around and consider subscribing. This is the kind of conversation most people skip past, even though it is running their bank account in the background. Now, here is the truth almost nobody says out loud. The women who eventually build real financial freedom are rarely the ones with the highest income. They are the women who develop something far rarer, a functioning, guilt-free relationship with the word no. Watch what happens to a woman's finances the first time she declines something without over-explaining herself. She keeps the hour she would have spent doing a favor for free and either rests in it or turns it into money. She keeps the rate she would have discounted and gets paid what the work is actually worth. She keeps the money she would have loaned without a plan for repayment and puts it somewhere that grows instead of somewhere that disappears. Multiply that across a year, across 5 years. That is not a personality shift. That is a wealth strategy disguised as a boundary. This is the piece the finance world consistently gets wrong. They treat budgeting as the fix, when for a lot of women, the leak was never the spending. The leak was the yes. You cannot budget your way out of a habit of constantly giving away your time, your discounts, and your energy for free, and then wondering why the numbers never move. Let's slow down here, because there is a distinction worth making. This is not about becoming cold, difficult, or suddenly refusing to help anyone, ever. That is a lazy, exhausting caricature of what boundaries actually look like, and honestly, a little insulting to assume that is the only alternative to being a pushover. The shift is smaller and far more interesting than that. It is a woman learning to ask one quiet question before she agrees to anything. What is this costing me? And am I actually willing to pay it? That single question changes everything, because most yes are not evil. They are just unexamined. A woman says yes on reflex, the way she breathes, without checking whether she has the time, the energy, or the money to spare. The goal is not to say no to everyone. The goal is to stop saying yes by default. Here is where the story usually takes an unexpected turn, the part almost nobody prepares her for. The hardest part of learning to say no was never the money. It was the identity underneath it. For years, a lot of women build their entire sense of worth around being needed. Being the reliable one, the helpful one, the one who never lets anyone down. So when she finally starts protecting her time and her rates, something strange happens. She does not just feel awkward. She feels guilty, like she is quietly betraying who she thought she was supposed to be. That guilt is not random. It is the exact reason so many women stay financially stuck long after they know better, long after they have read the books and watched the videos and nodded along. Knowing the strategy was never the hard part. Detaching her self-worth from her availability was. Think about how differently a woman is spoken about depending on whether she says yes or no to the same request. Say yes to unpaid extra work and she is a team player. Say no and she is suddenly difficult, not a team player, hard to work with. Say yes to lending money she cannot really spare and she is generous. Say no and she is stingy, tight, not as warm as everyone assumed. The behavior barely changes. The judgment flips entirely, and she has been trained her whole life to avoid that flip at almost any cost, including her own bank account. This is the quiet, unglamorous battle behind every woman who eventually builds financial freedom. It was never really about spreadsheets. It was about becoming a woman who can tolerate being slightly less liked by people who only liked her convenience in the first place. And here's the part that raises the stakes even further. Every time a woman keeps something for herself, whether it is money, time, or energy, it does not just stay in her pocket. It gets reinvested into a business that finally gets built instead of talked about, into an emergency fund that finally stops living at zero, into education, skills, or an opportunity that requires both money and the mental space she was previously giving away to everyone else. That is the actual compounding effect nobody puts on a chart. It is not just interest on money sitting in an account. It is what happens when a woman's time and energy start compounding too, because they finally have somewhere to grow instead of somewhere to leak out. Here is the part that tends to catch people off guard the most. The financial gap between women who say yes to everything and women who do not is not usually explained by income at all. Two women can earn identical salaries and end up in completely different financial positions 5 years later, purely based on how much of their time, labor, and money quietly disappeared into other people's requests along the way. This is why the moment a woman stops saying yes to everything rarely looks dramatic from the outside. Nobody claps. Nobody notices. There is no big announcement. It usually looks like a short, forgettable sentence. Something along the lines of, "I can't take that on right now," or "That's not something I'm able to do for free anymore." Small words, mildly inconvenient in the moment, and financially louder than almost anything else she will do that year. There is a deeper layer to this too, one that has very little to do with other people and everything to do with how a woman treats herself. Saying yes to everyone else while constantly saying no to herself, no to rest, no to asking for more, no to spending on her own growth, is its own quiet financial pattern. It just gets dressed up as selflessness instead of what it actually is, which is a woman consistently placing herself last on her own list of priorities, including the financial one. The moment that starts to shift is not loud or cinematic. It is a woman pausing before agreeing to something and asking herself a question she never used to ask. Not, "Will this make me look difficult?" but, "Does this actually serve me?" That one shift in the question changes the trajectory of a decade, not because it fixes everything overnight, but because it compounds the same way money does, the same way debt does, quietly and relentlessly, until one day the difference is undeniable. So maybe financial freedom was never only about the accounts, the income, or the investments people love to talk about. Maybe it started somewhere much smaller and much harder, in the moment a woman finally let herself be inconvenient, let herself disappoint someone, and discovered that her worth was never actually up for negotiation in the first place. The money simply followed once she stopped giving it away disguised as being agreeable. Because the truth is, no one ever hands a woman permission to protect her time, her rates, or her energy. She has to take it herself, one uncomfortable no at a time, and somewhere in that discomfort, freedom quietly starts to look like something she finally owns.